各位亲爱的网友朋友，大家好。
Hello, my dear friends.
我们今天呢就讲一下，就是精准到可怕的预言。
So today
那就是在
I'm going to talk about this scarily accurate prophecy.
这位神人
So
刘
this
伯温
prophet Liu
他的
Bowen,
一生呢，其实
who
对于
helped to
这个
establish the
世
Ming
界上最
dynasty,
重要的人、重要的事
his
做了很
life
多预言。
actually,
尤其是
well,
预
in
言
his
到了
life, he
朱元璋
actually
能做
made the
皇帝
prophecy for many major
都预言
events
到
in
了
the
很
whole
多次的
history.
战役
Especially,
应该是
he
怎样
predicted
预言到了战役之
Zhu
中
Yuanzhang will be the
发生的
emperor
大的
and
重要的
different
细节的
wars,
地方。
how they will be fighted, and
那么
even
其
a
实
lot
流
of the
传到历史
details
上最
of
著
those
名的
wars.
就是他做的
And
预言歌，就叫
So
烧饼歌。
this Shaobing Song
他几
is
乎精
very,
准地
very
预言到了
famous in the whole
整个
history.
这个
He
大
very
明朝
accurately
从
predicted
兴起
this whole
以及到
Ming
灭亡的
dynasty
整
from
个
the
的
rise
大
to 的
的世界，
fall, the
乃至到
whole
灭亡的那一
process
天，
until the
还有
day
谁
of the fall,
灭的
and
大明
who
王朝。
will
那你
defeat
说这是不
and
是有点
cause the fall
可
of the
怕
Ming
的感觉
dynasty?
啊？
Does it feel
真是
scary?
鬼
Yeah.
神都感觉到惊讶呀！
Even
何况我们人
deities or ghosts
因为
would be very
我们今天已经到
astonished
了
to
现
hear,
在
right?
远远地
Let
超越
alone
了
human
明
beings.
朝几百年之
Well,
后，
now it's
他们在
hundreds of
当时
years after the
未
Ming
来的
dynasty.
300-500年之
You
后，
know,
未来的300-500年之后，
so
还没有到
he
来的这个
actually
时空
made the
发生的这些
prophecy
事情，
for
他就知
300
道，
or 500
而且知道
years
相关的
later,
重要的人
and what's going
叫
to
什么名
happen
字，
and what the names
甚至发
are,
生的地点，
who's and even the
甚至是捣
location
乱的
when the
人
event will
等等
happen
的都
and
预测到了。
and who will make the
所以我
chaos
说，
and all
其
of
实我一
those.
开始我就觉得
So
我们今天直播的名字就是叫做
I thought that
可怕的预言。
the title of this live
那有人
stream
说这
would
个
be
有点
called a
是
scary
不是故意
prophecy.
将这个
So
东西弄得很
maybe some
玄？
people will say, oh, you're
让我们的
intentionally
朋友们
making
一
it
听，
very
哇，那么
scary,
玄
so
乎，
our
如
friends
果
would
没那么
feel,
玄呢？
you know,
你
what
仔
if
细
it's
想一
not so
想，
scary?
如果未来有一
Well
个算命师告诉你哈，你
What
哪
if
一
it's
天
not
撞
so
车，
accurate? Well,
哪条
if
腿是断
somebody
的，
tell you like
之后
when
你
you're
哪
going
一
to
年
have a
得脑
car
血栓，
accident
哪一
and
年得
when
癌症，
like which leg
之后
would
你
be
哪个孩
cut
子不
and
好，
when you have a
你哪
stroke
天
and
死，
which
告诉你怎么
child
死的，你的分数
is
哪
not
分，
good and
就是说你的
what
尸体
day
被
you're
煮
going
薄
to
了，等等的
die
都
or
能发
where
现。
your
当事实能证明的时候，你不准
cemetery
害
will
怕。
be, and when these
何
can
况他
all
预
be
言了几
proved
百年的
accurate.
大明
Do
的
you
整
feel
个发展的
scary?
过
And
程中的
especially
大事件。
he
所
even
以
made the prophecy for hundreds of years
这是中国
later,
历史
and
上
it's so
非常
accurate,
精准的预
really
言
scary.
的一位
So
超级大师
this
刘伯
was
温和他的烧
a
饼歌。
super master
好，今
who
天我们就来叙述
predicted
一下
and
啊。
made
哎，
a super accurate
那么
prophecy. So
话
let's
说呢，就
talk about
是
the details.
有一天
So one day,
他的老主人朱元璋，其实朱元璋比他
朱
年轻，
元璋
哎，
who
但
was
是
his
我们说是历史的问题嘛。
emperor,
他的
right?
主人
Zhu Yuanzhang actually was
那不是
younger
当
than
皇帝了
him.
吗？
So Zhu Yuanzhang
有一天
already
这下了班
became
之后
the
跑了
emperor. So
哎，
one
这
day
个
after
有
the
点，
court,
他是一个
and
很开创的皇帝哈，他的大脑
because
没
Zhu
有停止过
Yuanzhang
一刻。
was,
你想，
you know, the
该定的法律
establisher
也
of the
定了，
Ming
是
dynasty,
吧？该
and
封
he
的
never
工程
stopped
都
thinking.
封
He
了，
thought, oh,
哎，
we have
这
already
个敌
established
对
the
分子该
law,
跑
the
的也
legal
跑了，
system, and we have
哎，
already, you know,
甚至该
awarded a
写
lot
的
of
家信也得
generals,
写。
and
哎，到了这
um,
个时候，
so, and he
你
has
就想，
already
哎，
done a lot of work. So at this
我们
time,
这一
he
切这个
might be
国家
thinking,
创造出来不容易，对不对？多少人为
to
此
establish
献
such
出了生命呢？
a dynasty is
献
not
出了自
easy.
己
So
的
many
身体
people
啊！
devoted their
那
lives.
我们建立这个大明
So
王朝能
to
多少
establish
年、多
this
少辈
Ming
啊？
dynasty, how
是
long
吧？
would it
因为今
last?
天人
How
富裕一
many
点了，是吧？
generations?
说我挣了这个
So
财富，我
now
能传
people
承
are
几代？
getting
我前
richer,
面我们不是
and
说
so
富不
all
过三
these
代，
wealth, how
富不过
can
四代，
how many
还有一些
generations
国家
can
的
we
大集
keep
团，
it?
有的
And
传
so
承了8
before
代、10
we
代都有，对不对？
mention about,
哎，
you know,
那是怎么
some
传的？
wealthy families,
皇帝也是人，
they
他
cannot
无非
pass
就比较
down for
神一
over
些，
3
对不对？
generations,
他
but
也
some
非常的，哎，
some big
非
families, they
头痛，
actually
他也想着
can
说我能多传几代更
have
好，
the wealth
是
for
不
like
是？
8
多
generations.
找几
And
个神
for
人给预言一下，
this emperor of the Ming
哎，
dynasty, he
这
definitely
个时
want
候
to
他
last last for more generations, and he wanted to hear some prophecies and know something. And so at this time, the palace maid brought him some, it's called Shaobing, which is like a kind of pancake. It's round, and they will bake, and it's a little bit crispy. And so right after he had just one bite, the eunuch reported, Liu Bowen is coming to see you. And so he said, this is a good time. So he just had one bite of the Shaobing, the pancake. And so he covered the pancake with the bowl and said, okay, just tell him to come in. And so Liu Bowen came in and greeted the emperor and, saluted. And then the emperor said, you're a very good prophet, right? And you also helped me to do a lot of great things. Actually, I have another question I want to ask you. You know everything, right? Actually, Zhu Yuanzhang is quite jealous about him. Zhu Yuanzhang was very capable, but he doesn't have the prophet ability, even though he has very good leadership skills and, military skills, but he doesn't have any ability for telling any prophecy. And so he said, okay, Mr. Liu, what do you think is here under, the bowl? And so Liu Bowen pinched his fingers and then closed his eyes and said, oh, this is half like the sun and half like the moon. A lot of Chinese people, their Chinese are not so good. So could you translate my Chinese? Yeah, half like the sun and half like the moon. Yeah. Once bitten by a golden dragon. So golden dragon actually means the emperor. It has been bitten by an emperor, so it missed a small part. This is a pastry. Yeah, so this is food. So the emperor thinks, wow, he's really very good. Like the Monkey King, he can even see through my bowl. Okay, pretty good. If you have this ability, then come over and see some big things for me. Predict some big things for me. And so he said, okay, it's not easy for us to establish the Ming dynasty. So could you predict the future of the Ming dynasty? How many years and how many destinations can the dynasty last? So even though he can predict a lot of things, and first of all, this is a universal secret. It shouldn't be released. And also, he is just a subordinate. He cannot tell the emperor when he's going to die. And especially, it relates to the fate and the destiny of the country. And even if he knew, if he tell, then he cannot make the emperor unhappy. Because of course, all emperors want the country to last as long as possible. He could even be beheaded. And so Liu Bowen said, the fate is vast and boundless. My emperor will have tens of thousands of children and grandchildren. There's no need to ask. So so there will be many, many generations in this Ming dynasty. You can, pass down to many, many generations. There's no need to talk about it. And then the emperor says, yeah, I know that you just want to please me, but every dynasty, it has its rise and has its fall. There's no worry to talk about it. And so don't worry, just talk about it. And so Liu Bowen said, no, the universal truth cannot be released. If I tell you, it's a big crime. And so So first of all, I have released the universal secret, and also it can annoy you. So I dare not say anything. I do not want to, annoy you. And then the emperor said, don't worry. Even if you say something annoying, I will not punish you. So whatever you know, you just tell me, but just don't tell the forced things. So, and Liu Bowen still didn't want to. So the emperor said, okay, I can give you a badge that it says that it will prevent any death. And so usually it's a very like a virtuous and who has a lot of, have done a lot of achievements. Those ministers can get this like avoid from death, golden plate or golden plaque. And so he awarded, he granted this death avoiding plaque to Liu Bowen. So Liu Bowen started to say something. So our Ming dynasty has unified the world. In the Ming dynasty, they don't have any airplanes to go to Europe or the world. They think China is the whole world. The Ming dynasty is the whole world. And now he started to predict. So listen carefully. The south will languish and the north will prosper. Although the crown prince is from your blood, is your direct children or grandchildren. As the star of when reaches its peak, the sun is close to the west. So this is literally, yeah. Well, and then Joy said, I didn't understand. This is ancient Chinese. I don't know if Zhu Yuanzhang understood at the time. So the south will languish and the north will prosper. So when Ming dynasty was established, there's a process. You remember when they were fighting, they started from Nanjing, which was the south of China. It's not Beijing, which is the north of China. So they started from the south and they defeated all the other rebellious people, and then they also fought against the Yuan soldiers, and then they eventually united the country and established the Ming dynasty. And so the south actually prospered first, but the north will prosper later. And so they liberated the north. So the first, at the beginning, they united the south, and then they marched all the way to the north, and they dispelled all the Mongolians, and eventually they united the country from south to north. And also the capital of the Ming dynasty at the time was Nanjing, which is literally translating as South capital. So, but after about 20 years, they moved to Beijing, which is the North capital. At that time, how can they move the capital to the north? Oh, so Zhu Yuanzhang was the establisher of the Ming dynasty, so he decided and established the capital at the Nanjing, which is the south capital. And so Liu Bowen predicted that the south will languish when he was talking about the fate of the Ming dynasty. So according to the history, the records in the history, what I heard was that the capital when it was, there had been no country or dynasty who had their capital in Nanjing and lasted long. So there used to be capitals in Xi'an or Luoyang, Kaifeng. Yeah, Kaifeng. But in the past, Kaifeng was not called Kaifeng, but it's called Bianjing. And those names are not very auspicious, and they were actually defeated by other forces. But Xi'an is a very nice name. The West is peaceful. But the only within 20 years of the first 20 years of the Ming dynasty, Nanjing, the south capital, was pretty good. But after 20 years, when Zhu Di became the emperor of the Ming dynasty, he set the capital in Beijing, the north capital. At that time, there was another Buddhist monk. I'm not going to tell his name yet, but he was just as powerful and connected as Liu Bowen. And so at that time, that monk actually proposed to have the capital in the north. And yeah, they actually had a lot of stories in their conversation when they were deciding where the capital should be. So let's come back to this prophecy. So the south will languish and the north will prosper. Yeah, so you should actually discard this south capital. Yeah, when the north prosper, and you can look at the whole country. So maybe we can give you a brief introduction of the philosophy of China. So in China, they have a very practical philosophy. It has something to do with the geography. Where would the sun rise? In the south, in the east, right? And then sunset in the west. And so if we build a house, and the house is sitting on the north and facing the south, so which side will receive the sunshine? The south. Oh, Christine, you don't know? Oh, is it because you haven't lived in the north before, because you came from the south?
南方离太阳的那个方向更改变了之后，说不定在上海的话就能太阳照进，从北边照进去。
南方的北窗还是照不到太阳。
还是照不了。
Even in the south, the sun won't be able to shine on the north window. But in Australia, the sun will shine in the north window, but the south window will have no sun. And so in Europe and China and a lot of countries, the south will receive the sunshine. The north window will not receive the sunshine, right? So when they build a house, so usually there's no window on the north side of the house in China. Yeah, because in the North China, they like to keep warm. And so when the house is warm, it would be good for the growth of the children. So in North China, when they build houses, they don't want to have any windows at the north side because they can only receive sunshine from the south. And that actually helps, to prosper and to grow.
他这样才是对的。
Yeah.
所以你在半边腰上出一个首都之后，
If you sit in the north and looking towards the whole country, it's actually very solid. And Nanjing is only in the middle of the country. And all these dynasties, in 1945, there was also, the government, they didn't last for a few years, right? It didn't last for many years, just a few years, yeah. So in the future, if you're going to be an emperor, emperor do not have the capital in Nanjing, which is, the south capital, okay? Because that will affect the destiny of the country. And the fact has already proved, the history has already proved that the capital in the north is actually a good decision. At that time, a lot of people objected to those because, moving the capital is... because at that time, Beijing is already very close to the border of the country. Because beyond the Great Wall, it's already called the minorities, and it's not China anymore. And they're enemies of China, and so they don't belong to the China. So when they move the capital to Beijing, it's like the emperor is right sitting on the border of the country. So when we have a war, usually the general will be stationed in the middle, right? If you move the general's tent to the border, aren't you silly? But so this sounds very incredible. However, this happened in the Ming dynasty, and the history has already proved that it actually helped the whole Ming dynasty to prosper. So isn't it funny? Interesting, right? So, and this has also already been indicated, predicted in the Shaobing Song. So the capital city will definitely need to prosper. It will indicate the prosperity of the whole country. Although the crown prince is your direct children, so if I do not share the history with you, you probably don't understand what it means. If you know, well, of course, if you know a little bit about the Chinese history, you know all the crown princes are their direct children. Why does he say, although the crown prince is your direct children, direct child or grandchild? Why did he say although? Okay, Zhu Yuanzhang, after he united the whole country, then all the ministers will tell the emperor what to do, in addition to establish the legal system and maybe start farming and maybe build some rivers and tunnels and maybe perform some reform of the taxation system. And there are also a few things about the emperor's private things. The first is to decide who is the crown prince. Just in case the emperor passes away, even if you only have 3 children, then who will be the emperor? And especially Zhu Yuanzhang has many children, a whole group of sons. And so the minister said, okay, emperor, this month you definitely need to make the decision who's going to be the crown prince. Every emperor will do that. And another thing is, you also need to give us the fund to build your cemetery, the tombs. Sometimes the tombs will need to take decades to build. Like the first emperor of Qing. Because they need to build underneath the ground, especially in ancient times. So they need to build very early, and so build those imperial tombs, and also decide who's the crown prince needs to be done first, because it affects the destiny, the fate of the whole country. And there are a lot of also the etiquette and also a lot of regulations. So deciding who is the crown prince is also one of the most important things. and the crown prince also need to learn how to manage the country, and the ministers also need to know who to who to support, right? Oh, you're very knowledgeable about these. Maybe you're from the Ming dynasty, maybe sent from Zhu Yuanzhang. Anyways, so now they need to decide who's the crown prince. And so Zhu Yuanzhang actually, Zhu Biao actually has very good relationship with him. Zhu Biao was very kind and very nice to his younger brothers and sisters, and he was very filial and also very well educated, well, actually very knowledgeable, and also know how to fight in a war. And anybody who have seen Zhu Biao would support that, would agree that he's a very good person. And so usually they would usually the eldest son would be the crown prince, and also he was born from the Queen Ma. Yeah, so crown prince usually would be the son, definitely has to be the son of the prince, and best of all, it would be the son from the queen. If he's from a concubine,
就是有点像甘蔗的那个底下那个字儿，底上那个音响台小歌得写一下。
这庶出的那个庶。
对对，就是指的是平民啦，就不是。
古人讲的庶民。
So they're just talking about how to write that Chinese character.
可以。但是如果说
if the prince is born by a concubine, it's okay. And if the prince was born by a palace maid or another, an outside girl, then okay. If that child is also the son of the emperor, it's also okay. If they have also the queen's son, the concubine's son, or a palace maid's son. Definitely, the first choice would be the princess, or the queen's son. So they decided Zhu Biao to be the crown prince. Sometimes good people don't have very long life. Yeah, Zhu Biao actually died before his father in his middle age. Yeah, so he died before Zhu Yuanzhang. So it was a waste that they decided him to be the crown prince. Zhu Yuanzhang. Nobody expected that Zhu Yuanzhang decided that Zhu Biao's son would be the crown prince. So it's Zhu Yuanzhang's grandson. So usually it is the son to be the crown prince. Yeah. So if the crown prince died, then usually they would find another son to be the crown prince. However, in this case, Zhu Yuanzhang decided he passed beyond all his sons, and he gave the right to his grandson. So that's why in this Shaobing Song, he used the word although the crown prince is your direct descendant. I think Zhu Yuanzhang has many sons. Yeah, at least 8, more than 8. Yeah. You have so many sons, but you pass beyond this whole generation. Maybe the eldest son passed away early. Usually, the emperor would choose a very good one among all the rest of the sons. So this will make people feel more reasonable. Usually, they do not. The emperor will not give the throne to a grandchild, but this happened in Zhu Yuanzhang's case. So when Zhu Yuanzhang
使得朱元璋的传承产生一个翻天覆地的扭转的局面。
Yeah, so this completely changed.
就改了，所以就解释了，虽然太子是嫡裔。
Yeah, so completely changed Zhu Biao's direct children. Even though a crown prince is also your direct descendant, as the star of Wen reaches its peak, his grandson Zhu Yunwen, so that's why it's called Star of Wen. Yeah. And also his name is also Jianwen. And also this prince, this crown prince or this emperor, Zhu Yunwen, also emphasized more on the civilian things, not the military things. And so,
底下这两个交叉太弱，太软弱。
So when we look at the character of Wen, on the top, this Wen is like the sun, and then it has a cross under, so it seems to be very weak. And actually, that was true, and he was very weak. And Zhu Yunwen only has been on the throne for like 4 years, less than 5 years.
我们得看，我们先这是个秘密。我们按照
Well, this is a secret.
烧饼歌来看。
Let's look at the Shaobing Song.
对
Yeah. So
大事不好。
对，大事不好。虽然这个
the Star of Wen.
咱们已经啰嗦完了
Yeah. So we've already talked about the crown prince thing, and so when Zhu Yuanzhang heard about this Shaobing Song, we actually, our capital city is very secure. Yeah. And so, literally saying, when the sun is close to the west, and it can also literally be translated as like preventing the west. And so Zhu Yuanzhang, the emperor, asked, why do I need to be on guard for? And so Liu Bowen said, although the capital is secure and strictly guarded, there seems to be nothing to worry about. It looks like that there is nothing to worry about. Yeah. Except for the swallow flying in. Swallow in Chinese is yan. So yan.
非常叫做贴切的那个人的名字就来了。
And then Yan is also the name of a prince. When people hear about Yan, when swallow come over, it's a good thing. But for Zhu Yuanzhang, for his empire, why they need to be worried about the swallow flying in? So let's see what happened in the history. To correspond to this Shaobing Song. We also think the capital is secure, and the military guard is very strict, and it seems to have nothing to worry about. However, we are only afraid of swallow flying in, or the yan flying in. So what does it mean? Joy said, we don't understand. So, and so the emperor was still thinking about swallow, But
此时就是说
and at this
做
time,
歌三
Liu
首
Bowen wrote
其实
3
做歌的概念
poems.
不一定是现当代人那么个歌哈，
So
就是叫顺口溜啊，称为歌。歌也不一定是诗啊，
it's like the
它是
lyric
寓
of
言
a
性
song.
的东西，
It doesn't
对吧？
necessary
没
to
有
be a
什么
poem.
对于
So
像
this
正
is
式
in
的
a
诗文啊那种标
cryptic
准的那种
form.
那种
And so it's
就
not
不信
like a
啊
very standard
它叫寓言
poem
式。
because it's mostly
一个是呢，
for, it's a prophecy.
子承御驾尽亲征，
When the dynasty
遗
has
愿
no
山河永
cavalry
乐
to depend on,
秃顶人来文墨院，
and imperial cavalry has to lead a military expedition personally, well, the emperor needs to lead the military expedition personally.
完全都不懂了了。
The territory will find peace in 永乐，
就是从后人，我们现在都是后人了嘛哈。
perpetual happiness, which means when the bald man comes to the pavilion of literary works, half of the heroes have returned to their
前面不是有个
hometowns.
只恐燕子飞来嘛？
对，
其实它是
Before we
连
talked
在一起
about
的
they're afraid of the
其实是
swallow
连在一起
flying
的
in, so this actually is connected.
对。
还有个秃顶人，对，就是
And there's also a bowed man come to the
好，那我们
pavilion of
解释了
literary
哈。
works. Okay, so now let's explain.
此诚御驾尽亲征，啊，这我们要讲这几句诗的时候呢，应该接着前
When
面
we are talking about, when the dynasty has no
日防
cavalry to depend
防
on.
什么呢？城市坚固，
Remember,
强大，只恐
before
燕
it
子
said the capital is secure and strictly guarded, but they're worried about the swallow flying in, 雁 flying
朱
in.
元璋的4儿子
Zhu Yuanzhang's
名字叫
fourth
做
son,
朱棣，
his name is Zhu
但
Di.
是那个时候在皇帝制，就是朱元璋不是皇帝吗？
At that time, Zhu Yuanzhang
通
was
常都
the
是指
emperor,
他本
and
姓，
he
就是他的孩
can
子，也有人用
you
他
know,
的侄子或者他的兄弟去封
confer
王。
some
就现在形
kings.
同于是
And so
形同于也不是省长，就是
So he actually conferred some titles to his sons. So
对。
so they're like the
通常这个
kings.
王呢，对不起，我打断你的话了啊。
不好意思，我打断师傅了。
就是通常这个王呢，他在历史上，
So
他按照
those
春秋战
kings,
国时
according
期
to
通
the
常这个
history
王
in
他的
the
名分不如
war
皇那么高，
times
皇帝
or
是
the
统治者权力最大的，是吧？
spring and
但是王
autumn
是第二。
times, kings are not as
那么当时
you know,
战国时期
authoritative
的
as
他
the
最早
emperors.
他那个时期也有一个共同遵守的皇帝，你们知道吗？
At that time in
战国
the
时期啊，春秋战国时期，
in
他
the
们有
war
共同
states
尊
time,
奉的皇
they
帝。
also
没
have
错了。但是那
Zhou
个时候
Tianzi
在
as their
我们
emperor.
其实读春秋战国历史的时候，为什么几乎都不提
When
周天子
we're
呢？
reading about the
什么影响？
history of the
本来是国
war
王，最后变
state
成县长
times,
了，谁还理
Zhou
你？
Tianzi, we never
就
mention
是这样
about him.
哪个人
He
连一个草寇都比他强大？
Yeah,
就是从
he
这个
is.
军
He
事
was so
和国家的
weak,
强度上来说的话，
even though he has the
就是
title of an
这
emperor.
个国王这个皇
So
帝一旦
this
弱下来之后，底
emperor
下臣就造反了。就是
was
这样
very weak,
好，
and
所
so
以这个
all
王
the
的概念呢，就从那个
ministers
时候
will
传下来的。
rebel, or
那王就是
the
这一伙里面
civilians will
的最大
rebel.
的首领。按照
So
过去的王这个概念呢，是自己有自己的朝廷，
Those kings will have their own
军队、
military soldiers,
税
and then
收
their
和他的百
own
姓，
court,
还有
and
他
they
的
have
地
their
方。
own
就形
taxation,
成一个
and
叫
then
自治
their
国。
own territory. They're
小王
like
国
a
的
small
自治国
territory or small
就是
kingdom.
宏观上说，我们崇拜，就像很多像加拿大吧，现在
Just
是我们
like
最
in
高的
Canada
最高的，你要印的钱币上，
对对对，
Maybe the
那
highest
最响亮的那张照片是谁呢？
皇的照
英女皇，
authority
像加拿
is
大，所以它最高
the
的
queen.
最高的
Queen
政治的首领
Elizabeth
其实是英女王。
So
但是
the
加拿大又相对是
highest
自治，对不对？
power
所以
or
它
the
的管理委员会
highest
之中最高
authority
的叫
is
总
the
理，
queen.
而
But
不
in
叫
Canada,
总统，也
actually,
更不叫国王。
so that's why in Canada we only
它的
have
国王
the
是谁呢？英女皇。
prime
所
minister.
以对了，这就形成一个王国。
So it's a little bit similar to the concept of the kings in those kingdoms. And so this Zhu Yuanzhang conferred mostly his son, a few of his grandchild too, as the kings. And Zhu Yuanzhang was actually quite smart. Before, like the kings can have as many soldiers as they want, but he changed that. He forced them to have maximum 20,000 soldiers, and if you have a certain amount of tax, then you need to hand them in to the emperor. Even though this kingdom is yours, but the soldiers are actually conquered by the emperor. It's not directly managed by the kings, even though his sons are called kings, but they have much less power than the kings in the war state times. And so his sons, with the title of the king, is just like a governor of a province. Yeah, and so these kings, they also have the names of the kings in the war state time. So the fourth son of Zhu Yuanzhang, Zhu Di, is called the king of Yan. Yeah. Yan. So Yan was originally the country Yan, and it's about the area around Beijing. So it's now the Hebei province, and Zhao is close to Xingtai and Handan, and Yan is close to Beijing. So he conferred the title King of Yan to his fourth son. Oh, so that's why there's this Yan in this Shaobing Song. So why was there the change? So we have to talk about the history so you can understand. Zhu Yuanzhang's grandson, Zhu Yunwen, after he took the crown, he was very young when he was ascended. He was 20 or 21 years old when he ascended the throne. And even though he was a descendant of Zhu Yuanzhang, he must have seen some, big events, but he hadn't had much experiences and hasn't had a lot of challenges before. And he was not like his uncles who followed his grandfather, Zhu Yuanzhang, to fight in the wars. So when he grew up, he because his family, he has like dozens of maids and nannies, and so he has never experienced any turbulences or ups and downs. But his uncles, especially the king of Yan, has had quite a lot of challenges and experiences. They experienced the war before, and they were very good at commanding the militaries, and because they followed Zhu Yuanzhang to eventually unite the whole country, so they know about military, and they know about how to manage the country. So Zhu Yunwen, when he became the emperor, he was quite lost, and because he didn't know how to manage the country, and therefore there are different people who made suggestions to him, like like Mr. Zhang or Mr. Li or General Li. And so one of them is Fang Xiaoru, who was a very famous scholar at that time. Fang Xiaoru was very, very famous at that time. He was a super scholar and like a very good professor, like to read ancient books. And so he talked to the young emperor, said, what kind of emperor do you want to be? Every emperor in China wants to be Yao, Shun, or those legendary emperors who are like saints. They're really saints. They're not like emperors. But that was only legends. So of course this emperor wanted to be an emperor like Yao Shun. And so the country will be very prosperous, and all the people will be wealthy, and he wanted to be the greatest emperor, especially because he was young, at like 20 years old, and he didn't know much. And he only thought that I'm stronger than all of you. Yeah, I've already read a lot of books about the ancient emperors, and I have the best scholars and generals to help me. So he wanted to be a very outstanding and great emperor. However, in our lives, there's there are lots of challenges, lots of traps. If you have a good teacher or a good friend, then your life will be in one picture. But he encountered Fang Xiaoru, such a powerful minister to support him. What did they do? So our online friends can comment on what they did. So only 1 month after he ascended the throne, he removed several of the kings. Some of them were killed, some were kidnapped, and some were poisoned. And so in the first month, he already removed 3 kings, and maybe the 4th and 5th were very frightened, and because those kings, they don't have soldiers, they don't have military power, so they cannot fight with the emperor. And at the same time, they also used a kind of, like a well field. So what is that system? It's a farming system that actually came from the Shang dynasty like 3,000 years ago. Even from Zhu Yunwen's time, it was like 2,000 years before his time. At that time, the whole society, they don't even have any iron tools or steel tools, and so all the land belong to the emperor. They don't have any private ownership, and so that farming system usually will say, okay, this land is yours. And so it's like the Chinese character Jing. And so on the surrounding 8 squares would be like private, you can use for yourself. And in the middle, in the center, is like the field belongs to the country. And so you need whatever grows in the middle, you need to hand in to the government as the tax. And so in the Shang dynasty, it actually encouraged people to explore and the lands. And then after the Shang dynasty, they're not using stone tools to farm. Later, they had like iron tools and carts, and so for the farmers to explore the land becomes so convenient. The ownership of the land then becomes very important to decide. And so that's why before the Qing dynasty, no, not Qing dynasty, but the Qing country, Qing, they had Shangyang reform. And so Shangyang, that's why Shangyang abolished this Jingtian farming system. So they had a new system to stimulate they had a lot of rules so that they can tax on the land, and then the farmers are very encouraged to explore the new lands, and so that actually was good for the economy. And now in Zhu Yunwen's time, and so this Fang Xiaoru asked the emperor to go back to the Shang dynasty and use the same kind of Jingtian system. So they want to go back to the ancient times and do the same thing as the ancient times. But because at that time all the lands are already privately owned, and Fang Xiaoru suggested that some of the lands will be handed in to the government. Nobody will support this, right? It was good that they actually It was good that Fang Xiaoru's proposal hasn't been applied. Otherwise, everybody will go against this emperor. So if this Jingtian system will be applied, then the whole country, all the people will against the young emperor. They didn't know that it was actually a proposal of Fang Xiaoru. This Fang Xiaoru, even though he was very old, but he didn't really know.
所以这个就是他等于在害死朱允文呐。
He's actually harming this new emperor Zhu Yunwen. He suggested for him to remove and kill all these uncles. But if he also applied the Jingtian farming system or the property system, then the whole country will be against him, right? And look, so look how important is your friend is. You see, so Fang Xiaoru is not a very good advisor. This young emperor wanted to be a very, very good emperor, but Fang Xiaoru actually made him like everybody. Fang Xiaoru brought a lot of resentment to this young emperor, and the whole country was quite chaotic. And so Zhu Yunwen continued to capture different kings, and he has already decided the day when he will capture the king of Yan. But, King of Yan, whose name is Zhu Di actually followed Zhu Yuanzhang the whole time to unite the whole country. And Zhu Di, he has his own army. He very rarely would face another army directly. He actually has read the Art of War, the Sun's Art of War very, very well, and so usually he trained all his soldiers into spies, and he put like 500 soldiers in the royal palace, so that the king of Yan would even know every detail what the emperor is doing. And so whatever Fang Xiaoru suggested to the new emperor, the king of Yan already know all of that. And so of course he know all about what the emperor was trying to do to him.
就是到天黑的时候，才靠近这个燕京，就是他的燕国的首都嘛，才靠近那个区域，好吧？不要早到
before dawn.
对，到那个时间点， 人家都已经这些信息
before
都一目了然，都清楚。
thus they
朱棣就派他的
approached
敢死队哈，就
Yan
一人
Jing
交个
and 朱
这个吸
棣
管啊，
sent
芦苇管儿，
芦苇管就
his
藏
soldiers
在这个冰下头。
and all
就是卢沟
the
桥下面那个水
his
下头，
soldiers
就等
actually
等了4个小
was
时，大家
waiting
都盼中间
under
就
the
是能开出来
water
啊，
with
敢死队呀。
yeah.
哎，等
So
他们
it
他
was
是
so
非常会
cold,
打
but
仗
they waited
等
for
来
4
抓他这个兵
hours.
一上这个桥，他们都从水底下杀出来。
Right at the
几
time
乎
when
全军
the
覆灭，
soldiers
就是来
came
抓
to
他的
that
朱允炆
bridge.
的军队
So
哈。对，
Zhudi's soldiers were hiding under the bridge, and before the soldiers from the new emperor arrived, they were all caught by Zhudi's
对呀，你来
soldiers.
灭我呀！
对，
啊，
Yeah.
来灭我，所以我就灭你。但是朱棣在
Because
此之前
the
早
new
就有
emperor
准备。
wanted to capture
朱棣有一个
Zhudi, and
特别
Zhudi was
超
very
级
well
大军事。
prepared. And
是我说的
Zhudi
那位
has
神
a
人，
very
那位神人啊，
wonderful advisor. Is that
叫
very
姚
powerful monk?
哇
His name was
笑
Yao Guangxiao.
姚广孝啊，这是一个实在是超级了不起的神僧啊，
Yao
了不起的大
Guangxiao
和尚。
was
因为这个
really
大和尚
an
早就有预言到了，
outstanding monk, a
真正的
really,
皇帝
really
是朱棣燕王，
wonderful,
而
a
不是其
powerful
他人，
monk.
更
And
不是
he
他的
has
长子
already
朱标
predicted
啊，
that
或什么孙子朱
Yan
允炆呐，
Wang
根
would
本就
be the
不是，
future emperor
我都不稀罕
instead
笑话
of
他们，
the Zhu
因为
Biao
在
or Zhu
好几
Yunwen,
年前，在
because
好几年
many
前，
years
就
ago,
是这个朱棣的母亲哈，
Zhu
哎，
Di's
去世
mother
了，
passed
这个
away.
马皇后
马皇后去世了，就是朱元璋的太太去世，
哦，
哎，
The
他们
Queen
都必须
Ma
从他的封国
died,
到
and so
当时到南京啊，回到首都来
so
吊
they
唁
went to
啊，祭祀
Nanjing
母亲，对不对？母
to
亲去世了呀，啊，说还要
pay
请一些道士和尚
condolence.
来帮着做
And
法事，对不
and the
对？
emperor
好，
invited some
那么
Taoist people
这个
and
姚广
also
孝
some monks to
他是
come
出
and
家
do
人，
the
佛教
rituals.
的，
And Yao Guangxiao
也一样走进
was
去。
a monk.
当路过到
He
朱
went
棣，这
inside
个时候他们没见过
when
面，
he
就看了朱
passed
棣之后，
Zhu
因为
Di.
那么多都是皇
There
子
were
啊，
so
皇子皇
many
孙的，站了一大排一屋子
emperor's
人，
sons and
所
so
以
many
到了朱棣那儿，
kings,
就
but
轻声
he
的
only
给朱棣耳
stopped
边说
at Zhu Di and：“
我想
whispered to
送
Zhu
你一
Di,
顶白帽子。”
I want to
你
gift
想他
you
母
a
亲死了，
white
送他
hat.
白帽，
Well,
那
because
燕
his
国那叫
mother
相貌啊，
just
就
passed
是守
away,
孝用的，听起来合理，对不
yeah,
对？
usually,
今天合
you
理
know,
的事
when
为什
mother
么
passed
悄
away
声
in
说？
ancient China, to gift a
白
white
帽，
hat is you know,
因
reasonable.
为那是
But why
朱
did
棣
he
当时
whisper?
听懂了燕王了，朱棣听懂了，
朱棣是
会
王啊，
心
燕王。
Yeah,
笑，
the king of
对，
Yan
哦，
大家有一个
understood
猜
what
字
he
哈，
meant.
就
So
是
白帽子王，
王
what
朱棣是
的
燕王，
上面加一个白是什么字？
if we put
王啊，
uh, if we put the white
哦，我知道，我
above
知道，是
the
这
the
个时候其实
character
姚广孝
white
就意思说
above
您
the
今后
character
有
king,
可能会
then
不是有可能，
king becomes the emperor.
就是你就是
Ah,
而且我
so
帮你。
what the monk means, I will gift
当
you
完
a
了之后，
white hat, actually
这
means
个
I
悼
want to
念
help you
这
to
个
become
结
the
束之
emperor.
后啊，
So after
朱棣
the
立刻
funeral,
就带着姚广
Zhu
孝走，
Di
我去
took
燕京
Yao
受的宴
Guangxiao
就把他
to
带走了。
um,
带走了之
Yan
后，
Jing,
这个姚广孝就告诉他，你
and Yao Guangxiao
未
told
来
him,
是要做大事，
in the future, you're going to
第一
do
个
something
你要储存粮草，
big.
还有
So
带有很多
first,
兵器，
you
你
need
还要准备很多
to
兵，
store a lot of
因为有一
food
天你会有灾的，
and haze,
而且是不合理的
and。also you
我不是
need
让你造
to
反，你到时候你就知道了，你做好
yeah,
这个准备
also
了
you need to prepare your
反正你不懂
armed
天下
forces.
哦，天下的意义就
Well,
到
when
了
the time
就让
comes, you
我
will
说你
understand
这么做。
why I
那
asked you
朱
to
棣是
do
打仗
this.
出来的，
And
总是有
Zhu
这
Di
种打仗的刺激和警觉，对不对？所以这个也有
actually
道
has
理，就打仗
experienced
打
a
惯
lot
了，
of
是不是？
wars
好吧，你说怎么
before,
做
so
吧？
he
第一个招兵，第二个
listened to the
要
monk's
打这个兵
advice,
器，
and so he
还练兵。
recruited a lot of students, and he
打兵器
trained
打起来叮
all
当叮当
those
叮当，要
students,
打
and
农具
he
吧，
also
光明正大打，对不对？你打的都是
he
大刀
need
长
to
矛，
prepare
是
a
不是？
lot
都是
of the
兵器。
military
那
weapons. So when they were preparing the weapons, it would have a lot of sound. So what if the sound be heard by the emperor's spies? So they actually they digged a tunnel, like an underground tunnel, and also on the ground they had a barn with a lot of ducks. So he trained all the soldiers underground or in a very wild field. And also he built a lot of weapons underground. And so this monk suggested him to do all the preparations. So when Zhu Yunwen came to, Zhu Yunwen is the new emperor. When Zhu Yunwen came to arrest him, of course this king of Yan has already received the message. And Yao Guangxiao has already, Yao Guangxiao is the monk. So Yao Guangxiao, the monk, has already calculated that you are the first to be arrested. Yeah, and so he said, they are not going to just arrest you, they're going to kill you directly. And even before they tried to capture the king of Yan, the new emperor Zhu Yunwen, they even tested Zhu Di whether he wanted to rebel. They used many different ways to test him. And Zhu Di pretend to be sick, like crazy, or like... And then he would, like, in a very cold day, and he shows that he was insane, and he pretended to be insane, and so he pretended and acted like he would go out, and in a hot day, no, in a very cold day, he would put cold water on his head, and he would, So Zhu Yunwen actually was very cruel, even though he was very young, but he killed many of his uncles very quickly and very fast. Yeah, he was very different from his father, Zhu Biao, and it maybe has a lot to do with his teacher and has a lot to do with his mother. Maybe his father was very kind, but his mother is very cruel. A lot of children is sometimes they are like they're more like their mother than their father. And sometimes even brothers are completely different siblings. They have completely different temperament. And so Zhu Di knows that as soon as Zhu Yunwen became the emperor, he will kill Zhu Di. And so Yao Guangxiao has already warned him a long time ago. And so Yao Guangxiao said, you are the king of Yan. At least you are more powerful than a governor of a province, at least. Do you want to be killed? And Zhu Di doesn't want to be killed. Of course he doesn't. He didn't want to be killed. And he... So if the emperor wanted you to die, then what can you do? So you need to be prepared. And so he secretly made a lot of preparations. He made a lot of weapons and trained his soldiers. And even so, when the new emperor was not able to arrest him, he formally rebelled. It was not very easy to fight those wars, and so they fought for 3 years, and eventually he occupied Nanjing, the capital of Ming dynasty. But the royal palace was on fire. And
也是个历史的谜题哈。
so this,
就不知道
and there
这是
was a
朱允
dead
文
body
还是其
in
他人。
the
反正有这么
ashes
一个
of the
男性的
palace,
年轻的尸体
and
在
there
那儿。
was
那
a
么
dead
很多
body
教父
of a
传人说，
male.
其实
And so a lot of
他已经
legends
跑了。
say actually
他成为
Zhu
了一个
Yunwen
出家
has
人在修行。
already
反正就是这各种传说都有，你
fled
也没
away,
人承认谁
and
是
Zhu
允文。
Yunwen became
但
a
是这
monk
留下这么个尸
also.
体。
But
那
when
在
Zhu
众
Di
人推举
came,
之
there
下，
was a dead
这
body
个朱
of
棣
a,
当了
a,
新
a
的皇帝。
man. So anyway, nobody knows
然后
whether
他
that
的
was the
年
emperor.
号
And
就是
then Zhu Di
永乐。
became the
对，
emperor,
你
and
看，
就是中国历史上有名的永乐大帝。
his
永乐大
reign
帝。
title
你看，
was
所以这个
Yongle, so
刘
he
伯
was
温朱
called the
棣，
Yongle
他在这个
Emperor.
他写的这
So
30
Liu
几首诗
Bowen
口
was
条里头，
so
遗愿生活永
good
乐。
at
前头说这个
predicting all
左
of
燕子
these.
飞来哈，
So in
燕
this
燕王朱棣，这个地方
Shaobing
燕王
Song,
都指
it
出来了，
already
然后永
talked
乐
about
永乐都指
Yongle.
出来了。
Yeah,
然
you
后
will
底下这
find
个
peace
秃
in
顶人，
Yongle. The
那
territory will
王
find
将军
peace in
明白了，
Yongle.
就
This
是
has already been
圣僧嘛，
predicted
这个
in
姚广
this
孝。
prophecy.
所以这个人有这么一个人也预测
And
出来了。
it also mentioned about the bowed
甚
man
至是
comes
他
to
们
the
为了对
pavilion
抗
of
朱
literary
棣哈，
works.
当
He
时朱
already
允文还
also
在的时候，
predicted the
对
monk.
抗朱棣前头有一句预言诗哈，这
There was
个
also
此
a sentence in
诚
the
御驾
prophecy.
尽亲征啊，就是
Yeah.
当时哈，
So at that
御
time,
驾亲不亲征的，就是当时他派不出一个像样的将军
the new
来抵
emperor
抗
Zhu Yunwen couldn't find
为啥呢？
a good
他爷
general
爷
to fight
在世的时
against
候，几
Zhu
乎
Di.
杀尽了所
Why
有的
is
能
that?
征善战的
Because
将军。
Zhu Yunwen's grandfather, Zhu
他呢，
Yuanzhang,
把
killed
能征
almost
善战的
all
叔
the
叔们
good
该打的
generals.
打，抓的
And
抓，
Zhu
谁都
Yunwen
不给他出力。
arrested
所以
and
剩下来
killed
的
all
全是些江
these
湖流氓级的人，哪
very
会打仗啊？哪会带
capable
兵呢？还
generals,
没见过
and
打
most of
仗
them
的
are
世
his
面呢。
uncles.
所以没
And
有人
the rest of the
就真正
generals
成
have
为朱棣的
no
战争对手。
abilities to
所以朱
fight
棣呢是在
against
山东刚开始
Zhu
打的时候
Di.
在山东受阻
And
了，
so
是山东有个秀才出面来折腾他，把他折
when
腾
Zhu
自强。
Di
等
fought
过了山东之后说我不打他那
against
路，绕
Zhu
海走，对不
Yunwen,
对？一下直接
he
到了南
actually
京，没
had
人抵抗得
some,
了。所
you
以
know,
这个
obstacles
朱
in
允文这一个
Shandong.
这一帮
That
人
was
就
a
灭了。
scholar there,
这样，
and
所以
yeah, so they
哎，
actually
御
eventually
驾尽亲征哈，
they
尽这个尽
won
字是指
across
没有
Shandong.
了，
So
用尽了
anyways,
能量啊。
the first
前面讲
sentence
那个
of
只恐燕
this
子飞来，
Shaobing
这
Song
就是
here,
燕
the
王
first song says that
啊。
the
还有
they
一
the
院
dynasty
山
has
河永乐
no
平，一院山河是
cavalry
大
to
明江
depend
山的。
on.
啊，
So see, this
那
has
这个
already
朱
been
棣
predicted here.
当皇帝之后，他们每个皇帝都
After
有
Zhu
年号，
Di
就叫
has
永乐。
been
第一年
has
这个永
taken
乐
the
元年
throne,
叫永乐平，
his
平
reign
天下，
title is
平天下，
Yongle.
平天下者就是皇帝。你看，预言都在前头呢。
Yeah, you see, the
这是
territory
几十
will
年之后
find
的事
peace
啊，
in Yongle.
好玩
And
哈。
this actually happened
好，
many
再接
years
下来，秃
after
顶
this Shaobing
人
Song.
来文墨院，
When
秃
the
顶
bold
人
man comes
人
to
来
the
文墨院，这
pavilion
个秃
of
顶人
literary
呢，就
works.
是刚才说那个神僧姚广孝
Yeah, the bold man
啊，
is
这
that
个人
the monk
叫
Yao
做就是我们
Guangxiao,
只能说他是
that
个神人，
very
他上知天文下知地理，没有他不懂的事儿。
very famous
这
monk,
个姚广
and
孝
he
大
knows everything about,
啊，
you
没
know,
有他不懂的事。
astronomy and
而且呢，
about
所以
you
这
know, the
个朱
calendars,
棣
about
当
everything.
了皇帝之
And
后，他其实成
when
为了
Zhu Di became
朱
the
棣当了皇
emperor,
帝之后，他成为了这个明朝
this
历史上
monk
应
became
该是最
the
难得
monk
的一
Yao
代这个
Guangxiao
大帝。
became
他做
and
了很
Zhu
多
Di
很多的
actually
好的
this
事情。
Yongle Emperor Zhu
对，
Di
其中一个对
became one
文
of
化类
the
的贡献
one of the
叫
most
做
powerful
永乐
and
大典，
good
对
emperors of the
还有
Ming
一个永乐
dynasty.
大中
He
对，永乐
asked
大
people to
典的
compare
主
the
要的负责
Yongle
人
canon.
就是姚广孝。
And Yao
所
Guangxiao
以姚
was
广
the
孝一
main
出来之后，以
editor
他
and
的
the
文
main
采，
person
其
to
他
be
一
in
般的
charge
文
of
人
the
都看不上你，
compilation.
回家种地去吧，就没办法和他一起共事了，太低级了。
Yeah,
因为他
because
的
of
能
his
力
high
超
level,
论
most
几
of
乎
the
所有的文人。
scholars cannot work with him because
那
his
么第二
ability
个，
is
这里
so
的预言
high.
来说，
They cannot
也
be
意味着
co-work
当时哈，
like
这个朱
co-workers
棣
in.
打进京城来之后，
And
他就
after
告诉大
Zhu
家，
Di came into the capital city. Zhu Di said, if you want to stay here and stay as the officials, then you can leave. Otherwise,
所以这个秃顶人呢，就是指姚广孝大师。但是姚广孝大师
yeah, you can stay
在
here.
刘伯温的预言之中都有，对不对？哎，但是
Yeah.
这个人实在是一个了不起的
So
一个
the
圣
bald
僧
man,
啊。
the monk, has already been predicted here in the Shaobing Song, and also half of the heroes have returned to their hometowns. So, because a lot of the officials from the previous emperor, they left and then eventually they came back. So this also has been predicted. Yeah. So this was a very detailed prophecy that like predicted many
刚才说的
details
第一
that
首歌，那不是他做了
that
3首歌吗？
happened actually many years
第二首
after
歌呢，就
the
是北
Shaobing
方
Song.
葫芦产生灵，御驾亲征得太平。
And then the
十万功
second
臣不敢变
poem was the Norse Mongols
生灵
harm
遮掩
civilians.
主心
The imperial cavalry leads military expeditions
这里呢，
personally and
第一
brings
句其
peace.
实讲的是
Maritable
当时的
officials
元朝
dare
蒙古
not
人
to
啊
give
蒙古人还经常过来，因
admonition,
为他们
the living soul cover
先让
up
他
the
们把他
Lord's
赶出去
frightened
了。
soul. So
他
the
再过
first
来进行
sentence,
骚扰，这是很常
you
见的
know,
事情。而且
the
他光
Norse
是蒙古人，
Mongols, it,
还有当时
Zhu
北部的有
Yuanzhang
几种
established the
少数
Ming
民族，
dynasty, but in the
也经常
north
会
there
打
were
过来，
still the Mongols
抢
and
劫
other
粮食啊，抢劫钱
minorities.
财啊，
They usually,
抢工匠啊、妇女啊
yeah,
都有
occasionally they will
骚
always
扰，
fight and
常常
assault
侵犯这
the
个
Ming
大明的边
dynasty
关啊。
and the border of the
哎，
Ming dynasty
但
and
是呢，这
harm the
个
civilians.
接下来有人出馊主意，有人出馊主意，好像主要出馊主意的是一个宦官，有印象
And
吗？这个宦官，
later there were people who gave bad
哎，
ideas and
我说错了，
oh no.
就是这一块儿，他这个预言就是说，北方葫芦残生灵，就是北方的那个少数民族，就是蒙
So
古
the
人
North
啊，其他
Mongols
少数民
harmed
族，老
civilians.
是来边境，
They
对，
always
侵犯我们，
assault
折腾我们啥的。
the
然后
civilians
呢，
at the
御驾
border of
亲
the
征
Ming
得太平，
dynasty,
这个永乐
and
大帝就是朱
the
棣，
emperor
他
Zhu
5
Di
次亲征，他戎马一
for
生，
5
好厉
times
害呀
he
他！
himself
是，
lead the military
可是呢，
expedition
就最
himself.
后一次
His whole life he
去
actually
去
lead
赶
the
走蒙古
expeditions
人军队的时候哈，
like
他
directly
就
by himself
因
personally.
病，
Yeah.
他过去也
But
受过伤
at the
嘛，
last
打仗的时
time
候哈，对，
he
这
was
个
sick.
旧伤又复
And
发，
he,
又赶上疾
because he
病啊，
was
又赶上
injured
疲
in
劳，
some of the
就去世
expeditions,
了。
and because of his illnesses, his injuries, and he was very
在里
tired,
面在战场上去世了。
对，
and
他
he
是御
died
驾亲征嘛，
对，
因为
because
他毕竟是一个
he
大将
led
出
the
身哈，
military
他说
expedition
打仗的时候他得来劲
personally.
儿
And
啊，
whenever
就
there
御驾亲
is
征，
an
我自己真是
expedition,
皇
he
帝，我
always,
要带兵
even
出去
though
打，
he was the emperor,
他
he
确
would
实能打，
lead the
他有
military
这个政
himself.
治理想抱负，就是
对，
我就
And
是要
yeah,
保
he
让国家太平，把他们赶
yeah,
得远远的，
and
对，
把他们
and he
打败了。
also
对，
he had the
可是呢，
ambition to
就
pacify
最后
all
这一
these
次哈，出
rebellions
去
and all the
就是
attacks. However, the
也不是
last
战
time
死，
when he led
就
the
是
military
连累
expedition,
带病
he
在旧伤
died
复发，
because of
年
his
纪高了，60多岁了。
he was
64岁，
exhausted. He
嗯，
was also
好，
he was
这
very
个就
old.
去
He was
世了，
already
去世
64
了之
years
后，
old at the time
因
he
为在
died. He
战
was
场上，
sick and he was old
你又
and
是
he was
皇帝，
tired
又是
and he
皇
had
帝，已经变成
injuries.
军队的
And
帅，
so
是吧？
he
又
was
是
the
皇帝，又
emperor
是
and
大
he
帅，
was the also
你突
the
然间死了之
commander
后，
of the whole
立
army.
刻内部保密，
And when
一
he
般的士兵都
suddenly
不知道
died,
啊，就是
then it
还
became
还
a
慢慢撤
secret
退回来
because
啊，
they need
对，
to
慢慢
slowly
撤回
get
城，
back to the
撤回到
capital.
京城啊，对，到了京城才发丧，
And
才把这
only
个
when
皇帝
all
去世
the
的消息才
army
赶出来，
get back
哎，
to
要不然的
the
话，
capital
那个敌
city,
人会
they were
趁机会追进来的，是这样的啊，
they
也
dare
做了一个
to
很好的安排，
disclose
对
the
对，这
news
个
of the
声
death.
明遮掩
So
啊，
they
遮
had
掩
a
就是
very good arrangement.
是一种
And so
遮挡
that's
物
why
啊，
in this
不
poem
走
it
漏
said the
消
living
息
soul
啊，
cover up the
对，
Lord's frightened soul.
主惊魂哈，惊魂其实其实意味着去世的意思。对，
Yeah.
这个惊魂也
So
让
the
当时
Lord
的
actually
大明王
means
他的百
the
姓也
emperor.
是吃了一大惊啊，
And
非常
all
害怕。
the civilians of the Ming dynasty, they were
所以呢，
actually
这
very
个
astonished
你
to
说
hear the
我就
news
说这
and
个
were
那个刘
frightened.
伯温
And
好厉害，你
So Liu Bowen was so accurate. He, in the prophecy, he predicted, you know, yeah, he predicted Zhu Di became the emperor. He took over the throne, and he also predicted when he died and how he died. Yeah, and even predicted that Zhu Di lead the military expeditions personally, and yeah. So the second poem is the prophecy for Zhu Di's military expedition and how he died. And then there's the third prophecy, the third poem. The emperor suppresses the auspicious cloud for 7 years. The Mongols dare not harm the wise and virtuous ones, so they send the golden dragon home. When the cloud disperses, the sun and moon will shine brightly on the frontier. So now this is already after Zhu Di. So this is Zhu Di's future generations. So in the later emperors, there was a Ming emperor called Yingzong, Zhu Qizhen. So there was a Tumu crisis. Yeah, so there was a Tumu crisis at the time. And so this time, Wang Zheng, that eunuch is called Wang Zheng. The north border, the Mongols were assaulting, and then Zhu Di sent them away. And there was another minority called Wala. So it was at the Ming Yingzong Emperor's time, and they were assaulting the borders of the Ming dynasty. And Yingzong wanted to learn from the Yongle Emperor, and so he led the military expedition personally this time. So it was a suggestion from the eunuchs. But why it is called a Tumu crisis? But the emperor was captured at Tumu Bao. Yeah, it's called Zhangjiakou nowadays. And then the people over there didn't know that how come the emperor of the Ming dynasty just came over to their land. It was, they had like 200,000 Ming soldiers, but all the soldiers were annihilated, and the emperor was captured. It was such a shame for the Ming dynasty, for the country. The Wala minority, they mostly they're doing animal husbandry, and then they're riding on horses, and so if they put the capital at Beijing, it was not easy. There was the Mongols and Wala and other minorities, so that was not very easy. So this emperor led the military, and they encountered the commander of Wala. He was very cunning and very good at fighting, and they always, I'm pretty sure that he knows the art of war, and he always pretends. They saw that they were all these Wala soldiers were there, but then there were only some sheep and cows, and there was nobody there. But then when they get back, all the Wala soldiers would capture them. And also the eunuch Wang Zheng, he didn't know anything about the art of war, but he was very very brave, and he always wanted to be the commander of the whole military. And he was a eunuch. He had no military training at all, but he wanted to make all the decisions. But all the 200,000 soldiers were sent to were sent to the mouths of all the Wala people. Well, maybe we don't need to talk about so many details of that. So maybe we can make long story short. So Yingzong was captured by the Wala. Yeah, so all the Ming soldiers were besieged. But when the Ming Yingzong Emperor was captured by the Wala people, the emperor's younger brother Zhu Qiyu became the emperor, ascended, because they didn't know whether Zhu Yingzong was the emperor or not. The Wala people wanted to, they wanted to say, oh, I have the emperor in my hand. I'm holding him, and so I can threaten the Ming government and yeah, and then they can ask for money, and so they. But then the Ming dynasty, the Ming emperor said, "No, he's not our emperor anymore. You can just kill him." And then the Wala people, they didn't need this previous Ming emperor. The Wala commander might think, oh my gosh, you're not very virtuous. And the Wala commander was not very cruel. He actually didn't kill the Yingzong emperor. First of all, because this Yingzong emperor, he didn't get any money from the Ming government. And he said, you see, I'm your enemy. You're the emperor. Yeah. Your younger brother became the emperor. And he even allowed us to kill you. So he didn't want to give food to the emperor anymore, so he just set him free and sent him back to, yeah. So when the Wala king sent him back, the Wala king actually was crying and in tears when he set him free and sent him back. Did this Yingzong emperor resume the throne? And no, the younger brother of the Yingzong emperor was already the emperor, so the younger brother just house arrested him, and and he actually kept him inside, and it's like a prison for 7 years, and nobody can even visit him. So that's why in Liu Bowen's Shaobing Song it says, the emperor suppressed the auspicious cloud for 7 years. Yeah, the emperor's younger brother actually house arrested him for 7 years. So the Mongols, they're not harm the wise and virtuous one. Yes, the Mongols, they didn't harm the emperor, and so they sent the golden dragon home. So they sent the emperor home. When the cloud disperses, sun and moon will shine brightly on the frontier. And so after Yingzong emperor's younger brother died, this Ming Yingzong resumed the throne. Yeah. So this Ming Yingzong, he actually was quite a nice person when he was captured by the Wala. Those Wala people even cried when he left, so he must be a pretty nice person. So a lot of the previous ministers still were loyal to him. right after his younger brother gets sick, there's some other ministers already set free Yinzong Zhu Qizhen, and so this Ming Yinzong eventually succeeded in resume the throne. Yeah, this is the first time, Christine said, I saw an emperor, became an emperor at the beginning and then resumed the throne. And he was house arrested for 7 years. But in this Shaobing Song predicted all about it. And when the cloud disperses, the sun and moon will shine brightly on the frontier. And Grandmaster said, this is not the most accurate part, well, not the most perfect and amazing part. So now, let's continue.
So when
Emperor Zhu Yuanzhang is still talking to Liu Bowen, and let's talk about the future in their conversation. And during the conversation, it says that the Mongols, they're not to harm the kind of virtuous, right? Then what will happen next? The Liu Bowen said that there will be chaos in this world. And Zhu Yuanzhang said, who dares to bring chaos to my empire? And Liu Bowen said a lot of words. And there was something. His words are very long, but we're going to pick the most important ones. Otherwise, we can't finish in this session. He said, appointing wrong people to the state office, 8,000 female ghosts disturb government policies. Appointing wrong people to the state office, 8,000 female ghosts disturb government policies. It sounds so dark and gloomy. So 8,000 female ghosts? Ghosts dare to bring chaos to my empire? I am very cruel and very vicious already. And Liu Bowen said, these 8,000 female ghosts, they have brought death to many loyal and kind people. Their corpses lay as high as mountains. And then he continued to say that killing the loyal and kind people is like a landslide and brings turbulence to calm waters. One saves the Jiao dragon's children. It's a pity that the father and son have such a difficult time in office. And so Liu Bowen said this poem. So 8,000 female ghosts, when they come around, many loyal and kind people will be killed. Saving the Jiao dragon's children? What's the story in there? It's a little bit difficult to understand. Let's discuss it. What happened here? Do either one of you wants to talk about it? I'm afraid of ghosts. One of you can talk about it. Talking about Jiao Long's children or the 8,000 ghosts. Let's start from the father and so after the sibling emperors, we go a little bit further down the timeline, and in Ming dynasty, there is a very interesting emperor. His name is Emperor Chenghua. And when he was young, it was very pitiful. His parents didn't take care of him, and I know the story of Chenghua. When he was 2 years old, there was a servant that took care of him. Her name is Wan. And so she probably took very good care of him, and so he has a very good relationship with this servant. And when he was 18 years old and became the emperor, his servant was already 35 years old. So the emperor is 18 and that servant is 35. And he actually made her his wife. And it's not just any wife, but a very high-level concubine, only second to the queen. And he doesn't care about her age. And since then, for 20 years, the emperor only liked this Madame Wan, this concubine Wan. And concubine Wan is 17 years older than the emperor, right? And she was 58 years old. And within 1 year, this emperor, who was only 41-year-old, was so sad that he died within a year too. Is it a real love story? And however, no matter how good this loving story is, this concubine Wan did many bad things. She didn't have any children herself, and whenever the emperor has a child, concubine Wan would find ways to kill that imperial children. So when Madame Wan was just a caregiver, she did her job very well, and she raised this emperor. But who thought that Emperor Wan is such a loving person? Usually, the emperor has many concubines, right? But he really loved this one person. Maybe, Master says, maybe he wants to repay her kindness of raising him. Can you show us this cup? I have one here too. This is a Chenghua chicken. A Chenghua cup with chicken diagram. Back then, there only a few was made. And the only few that remains today is in the British Museum, in the Metropolitan Museum, or in other famous museums. And we have a few here too. And this cup was specially designed as a birthday present for concubine Wan, because concubine Wan likes to eat chicken. And the way the diagram was painted and the color that was used was very special at the time. And no matter how, let's not talk about Emperor Wan's relationship with her, but the price, the value of this cup today is worth 280 Hong Kong million dollars, and that's about 3.36 million US dollars for one little cup. Why? Maybe because of their love story. First of all, no matter how bad this emperor is, anything that is used by the imperial family is very valuable. And only 36 was made at the time, and only a handful is remained today, less than 12. And many things are not sold, and it is just kept in museums. And so only 3 is available for purchase on the market. And maybe they will just hold it in their hands until their death, and they don't want to sell it to anyone. And so that one we saw sold by Sotheby's auction was a couple of years ago, and it sold for almost $40 million. And maybe because concubine Wanli likes porcelain, and that's why Chenghua Emperor made so many such beautiful porcelains. But no matter how loving she is, it is her fault that the Chenghua Emperor doesn't have any children. And also at that time, before Chenghua Emperor became an emperor, when he was still very young, many people wanted to kill him. And it is this concubine Wen, his caregiver, that protect him and saved his life. And maybe no matter how grateful this emperor is, he doesn't care about her age and made her like a second to the queen. But you already have the emperor's love. How can you kill his children too? Maybe it's because you received too much love from the emperor, and she's changed. She felt that the emperor is my own. I raised him since he was 2 years old. He is mine. And these young ladies now wants to kidnap the emperor from me and give birth to his children. It's unbearable for her. And so whenever there is a concubine that becomes pregnant, she would find ways to cause a miscarriage or make the concubines drink poison that causes miscarriage. If a concubine is very lucky and give birth to a child, the concubine Wan will find ways. She will find many ways to kill these infants. She was extremely evil. And so Chenghua Emperor never had any children, and he never had any grown children. And many people are guessing, and all the eunuchs, all the servants, they know what's happening. And if anyone gets pregnant, they will try to hide it. And even if the servants tell the emperor what the truth is, he didn't believe it. He couldn't believe that concubine Vine would harm his children. He lost his mind. He's blind by love. And so one day, concubine Wang was in her palace, and Chenghua Emperor took a walk by himself, and he walked to a storage room, and he wanted to see what was in there. But before he saw the treasures in the storage, he met a servant, and this servant was very beautiful and very educated, and she was also literate. She was well educated. And from there, she answered his questions very well. And he liked this servant. And so afterward, he forgot about it. And so what happened between them? So the servant got pregnant with the emperor's child. And so many servants, many eunuchs are trying to protect the emperor's descendants from concubine Wang. And so they protected the servant from concubine Wang, and she also gave birth to a son, and she also raised the son until 6 years old. And both the emperor and also the concubine Wang doesn't know he has a son. And one day when the emperor was talking to himself that I'm so old now and I don't have any children. When can I have a children? He's worried too. Well, I need to have an heir to pass on my throne, right? And one of the loyal eunuchs told the emperor that I have a secret to tell you. You actually have a child. Do you remember that 6 years ago when you took a walk and went to a storage, you met a servant in the storage, and he remembered, oh yeah, and she gave birth to her children. And only then did the child was brought to the emperor, and the child was hidden, and he has never seen the sun, and his hair was never cut, and he was very weak and unhealthy, and the emperor was very sad, and no matter what, he knows that this is his only son. And just a few days after the son was brought to the emperor, the birth mother was poisoned, and the loyal eunuch who told the secret to the emperor was also killed. And the emperor's mother finally has a grandson, and so she took the grandson under her wings, and took care of the crown prince. And later he actually became a good emperor. So think about concubine one. So she is one of the 8,000 female ghosts. It's these women who are disloyal and evil that disrupts the government, and also one saves the Jiao dragon's children, right? So it's hundreds of years after Liu Bowen's time, and he predicted all these. So concubine 1, previously she was just a servant, a caregiver, and she protected the young crown prince. When she was a caregiver, she was very professional, and when her position changed, her actions also changed. Your state of being decides your actions. You're the same person, but when your position changes, your action becomes unthinkable. So concubine 1 is uncontent. The emperor really loves her, and he took care of her, and he gave her everything, but she killed many of the emperor's children. And furthermore, although she was very good to the emperor, and you cannot kidnap the emperor with the emperor's gratitude. And also, as a woman, without any virtue and merit, and you are at such a you hold such a high title, no matter what you do, no matter what you are, virtue and merits are important. If you, as a woman, had virtue and merit, then you should be even better to the emperor, right? Don't be so angry. Let's continue to read the Shaobing Song. Let's talk about this crown prince that was saved. His reign title is called Hongzhi. Hongzhi was a very diligent emperor, And during this time, during his reign, it was in the middle period of the Ming Empire, and he actually brought the Ming Empire to a flourishing period. He was very strict. He was very caring for the civilians and think about things on their shoes. And he was also very kind. He was able to distinguish the good people from the bad people. He also suppressed the bad eunuchs and government officials. And he was so diligent that he met with government officials 3 times, early in the morning, during noon, and also late. And also he held many discussions in the Wenhua Hall with his ministers. They discussed government policies, or anyways, he was very diligent, and his words and his actions made many government officials love him, and so together they were able to make the Ming Empire flourish again, and so it was a very good time. Also, he had a very difficult childhood, but he was able to do very good in adulthood. Let's continue with Shaobing Song.
好，我们这个烧饼歌的寓言内容哈，我们再接着来读。
So let's continue to read the Shaobing Song.
接着这个稍等一下哈，这个我们讲到的刚才讲的8000女鬼这件事，
We talked about
这是一个
8,000 female
多层
ghosts.
比喻的意思。
And this is not
女鬼
one but many
就像
metaphors.
刚才害人的女鬼哈，
8,000 female ghosts. It could be a woman that harmed other people, like concubine 1. But there are other female ghosts that harmed people.
再讲一个。
Let's talk one more.
好，那就是到了这个万历皇帝的时候。
So still in the Wanli period.
这是咱们说的史实，就能对上他的预言。
This is
到了
not.
万历的那个时候。
This is another female
这个
concubine.
皇帝呢，其实他
So
呢
the
就是
Wanli
从小就5
Emperor,
岁的时候哈，就跟着一位很好的老师学习。
When he was 5 years old, he studied with a very good teacher called scholar Zheng.
太监这3个人对他的教育都是非常的好的。
So this scholar, his mother, and also the eunuch was very crucial to his education. And he became the emperor at 9 years old. And when he grew up, he was married. He had a queen, and then he also had many concubines. And there was a beauty contest in the entire nation. And from 9,000 participants, he chose 9 concubines. And the most beautiful one, he didn't like it. This person was very graceful, very elegant, but he didn't like it. And he also didn't like the queen. He liked concubine Zheng. And concubine Zheng, he loved her so much that they seemed like just one person. Why? So Emperor Wanli was very strict. So his teacher and his mother was very strict to him when he was growing up. And so all the other concubines and servants were also very quiet and very scared of him. But concubine Zheng was different. concubine Zheng was well educated and cultured, and she was very beautiful too. So remember, she was one of the 9 persons chosen from 2,000 participants. And when everyone else listened to everything the emperor said, concubine Zheng read the emperor's mind, and she helped him in times of difficulties. And when everybody didn't dare to move, she was able to joke around with the emperor. And the more, so remember the emperor grew up in a strict environment, so he really liked this concubine Zheng and felt that she was his soulmate. Can you understand him, right? And so it was a very interesting soul. It's my very interesting wife, concubine. And so he loved her so much that. So remember, so Wanli Emperor already had a son, and so this first son should be the crown prince. But he didn't. Concubine Zheng gave birth to his 3rd son, and so he gave the title of crown prince to his 3rd son, whose birth mother is concubine Zheng. And all the ministers opposed his decision. Everybody advised him that you should give the title of crown prince to your eldest son. And they fought over this for over a decade. And even then, the eldest son was never named the crown prince. But because of the minister's rejection, concubine Zheng's child were also not given the title of the crown prince. And when Wanli Emperor was 18 years old, he dealt with the government issues when he was at 18 years of age. And because he was unhappy about the crown prince situation, he never attended court meetings. And so he was on the throne for about 48 years, but he didn't attend court meetings for almost 30 years. And concubine Zheng, she did something that's so bad that she sent, after her son was named the crown prince, she sent killers to kill Wanli Emperor's eldest son. And when the killer was captured, the killer gave up Wang Guifei, and so everybody know that the killer was sent by concubine Zheng. And the emperor was so reluctant to punish Zheng Guifei, he just suggested concubine Zheng to apologize to his eldest son. And so Wanli Emperor never went to the imperial court meeting for 30 years. You can imagine that all these ministers, these government officials, they are in office for decades, but they have never met the emperor. And one of the ministers wanted to resign. He wrote over 100 resignation letters, but the emperor never replied a word. And so because the emperor and the minister had a grudge, this is what happened. And after the queen 10 years after Wanli Emperor died, concubine Zheng also died. And it's just that when Wanli Emperor was alive, she had a rock, she had a back, so she did many bad things. And let's talk about concubine Zheng's son. So her son is the third son, and his name is Zhu Changxun. He was sent to Luoyang as a feudal prince, and years later, when Li Zicheng rebelled, he captured Zhu Changxun and killed him. So if you harm other people, so this concubine Zheng is also a model, an example of the 8,000 female ghosts. It was because of her that the emperor never went to the imperial court meetings for 30 years. So the next emperor was actually a good emperor. He made many changes to the government policy, but he died within a month. How did he die? He gave and it was because of concubine Zheng as well. The concubine Zheng gave 8 beautiful women to the new king, to the new emperor, and the 8 women spent the night with the emperor together. And after that, the emperor was sick, and concubine Zheng sent a doctor to help the emperor, but the medicine that was given to the emperor caused him to run to the bathroom for 30 times. So he had diarrhea, and although he didn't die from the diarrhea, the concubine Zheng gives the new emperor a red pill. We cannot explain what this pill is, but after he ate that pill, he died. And so this new emperor was only on the throne for a month. And so why do we say it's 8,000 female ghosts?
新皇帝上朝以后，我还以为郑贵妃没了万历皇帝的这个后台撑腰了，赶紧就消停。
I thought that after Wanli Emperor died, and nobody can help the concubine Zheng anymore, but she was able to harm the new emperor and send him on his way to the other world. So it was because of her that her husband never went to imperial court meetings for 30 years, and she also killed the new emperor. She is a ghost that is sent to end the Ming Empire. And there's another female ghost. Xizong, so Xizong was only on the throne for a month, right? And and he died after eating the red pill, right? And so his son became the heir to the throne, and his son's name is and his son actually has 4 mothers. Why does he have 4 mothers? The first mother is his birth mother, the queen. Oh, sorry. The first mother is not his birth mother, but it's his mother. It's the empress. And the empress died very early, and his birth mother is called concubine Wang. So his father were on the throne for 1 month, and so he didn't name his mother as a queen yet. And in addition to his birth mother, he also has a foster mom, a caregiver. So his foster mom is not even a concubine yet. It's just a female servant. And in addition to his foster mom, he has another mom who was his wet nurse. So she breastfed the emperor. Usually in the imperial court, the mother didn't breastfeed their own children. They all had wet nurses. And so the wet nurse, her name is Madame Ke. And the emperor had a very good relationship with Madame Ke. And when his father was just a crown prince, his mother and his caregiver were had conflicts, and his father didn't love his birth mother. His father loved his caregiver. So this servant Li, their family don't have a good culture here. And so when so this caregiver servant Li was in conflict with his birth mother, and they were fighting and scolding, and his birth mother died because of their fighting. And so this young crown prince, when he grew up, he knew that his birth mother died because of his foster mom. Although he was very young, he knew that he never received love, and he saw his birth mother being bullied by his caregiver, and he always cried and felt injustice. Although he was very young, he was very young and he didn't have any influence, and so he grew closer to his wet nurse, Madame Ke, because Madame Ke really took good care of him. And in the later half of the Ming dynasty, the emperors all had very bad childhood. They didn't have love from their mom or father. It's very sad to be born into the imperial family. And when his father died, he stepped on the throne, right? Now he can make choices for himself. And he saw that his caregiver, servant Li, the caregiver Li didn't want to move out from the main palace, and so there cannot be a ceremonial. There cannot be the ceremony where the crown prince becomes the emperor, and so because she wants to become the empress, and it's because that the emperor died very early, so she was never named the empress, and so so basically she's holding the crown prince hostage, that you should give me the title of the empress and let me continue to live in the main palace. And one of the ministers, whose name was Yang Nian, was very righteous, and she got together with other ministers and taught her out of the palace. If you don't move out, then the ministers won't leave as well. And so servant Li saw the righteous energy of these ministers, then she moved out.
这够厉害的啊！托付啊，这好
So
像是咱们说的坐地炮啊！啊
So she's such a crazy woman. She just sat there and didn't want to move away. And when this young crown prince became the emperor, she looked around and see who he can trust. And he saw Madame Ke, his wet nurse. And when he saw that he can trust Madame Ke, he gave his wet nurse everything and give her the position like a very good, it's as if she was a queen. She controlled the imperial palace. She is just a wet nurse. How is she is not? She was illiterate, and did she have good merits or virtues? Did she? So what happened? Madame Ke was beautiful, and when people describe her as very sexy, and so she was very she actually had a relationship with a eunuch Wei Zhongxian, and they also got married. So it's actually not a very good relationship. So the eunuchs are castrated, right? And and also he cannot do his thing. He still wants to be with someone and live with her together. And so they find a female servant. So the eunuch and the female servant get together and get married. And the emperor actually allowed their relationship. This is such a it's not right. And then let's look at who Wei Zhongxian is. So Madame Ke got married with Eunuch Wei Zhongxian, and they got together and did many bad things. And so basically the two of them together, they held the emperor hostage again. So they spent time with the young emperor. And when the emperor go to imperial court meetings, he faced a lot of challenges, and the ministers wants to educate him. And he thought that Wei Zhongxian was very good because he brought him very interesting things, many toys, and so the emperor just wanted to play and sent Wei Zhongxian to deal with the imperial court meetings. When the emperor stepped on the throne, he was only 15 years old. And Madame Ke and Wei Zhongxian, they're a couple of crime. And any minister, if they give a good advice, they will block it, and they will send these loyal ministers home. And so there's never a kind, a righteous minister that give advice to the emperor. And then this emperor, maybe when he was growing up, he had a lot of he had many bad experiences, and so found ways to heal. And his way of healing is to do carpenter work. And so he is a famous carpenter emperor in Ming dynasty. And for over a decade, he just did carpenter work and never went to court meetings. And so he had 4 mothers. He has never met the empress. And he had never, his birth mother died. His foster mom was so bad that he almost didn't have the ceremony to become the emperor. And his wet nurse, his milk mother, Master says this is why the emperor didn't do any court meetings but became a carpenter. When his wet nurse stepped up to say that you're too young to do this, let Wei Zhongxian to help you. When no matter what he wants to do, one of his mother will step up and dominate over him. Also, he is emperor, but the Chinese culture really emphasizes respect your parents and being filial. And so he doesn't dare to stand up to them, but he forgot that he is an emperor. But he was very young, and people who give him advice, his mothers, really ruined him. Why did he do carpenter work? Because he cannot make up his own ideas so that he doesn't have to deal with people. He just needs to deal with wood. If I can't make my own decisions, then just let me do something else. Also, he sounds very innocent, but he's really unfilial to his ancestors. Because in the future, what happens in the future is the actual important point. We talked about the 8,000 female ghosts, bad women that influenced government policies. And we talked about Wei Zhongxian. What does Wei Zhongxian has to do with the 8,000 female ghosts? We can also say that Wei Zhongxian is one of the 8,000 female ghosts. Also, he is a man. He has castrated, and he is so he can be counted into one of the 8,000 female ghosts. What did he do? We know that the emperor in Chinese is also known as someone who is 10,000 years. Who is 100,000 years old. But Wei Zhongxian calls him 9,000 years old. So basically, he's saying that he is the emperor too. And think about it, the emperor's wet nurse is Wei Zhongxian's spouse, and so he is seeing himself as the emperor's father. And together with Madame Ke, the wet nurse, he actually killed many loyal ministers. And he held, basically, he was like Cao Cao. He held the emperor hostage and ordered the ministers. He did many bad things, and I'm not going to name every single one of them. And so the bad things that the women did and Eunuch Wei did, they sent the Ming Empire to its future. What is the future? Let's go back to the conversation between Liu Bowen and Zhu Yuanzhang. Zhu Yuanzhang asked, "What's the issue? Are the father and the son fighting for the throne?" And Liu Bowen said, "No. Then what is it?" A body hangs dangerously on the tree. A body hangs dangerously on the tree. It all stops when Shun comes along. The world does not end at this point. So what does it mean? On top of the tree, there hangs a body. Actually, in the poem, the two words is a ruler used by carpenter. And this is one meaning, but this is not the important meaning. The other double meaning of these two Chinese words is that a person's body is also called qu, chi. Chi also is the homophone for shame and disgrace. So the Ming Empire's disgrace is hanging on the tree. And it all stops when Shui comes along, when Shun comes along. And it actually refers to the last emperor of the Ming Empire, Emperor Chongzhen. When Li Zicheng rebelled in Xi'an city of Shanxi province, he named himself emperor, and his reign is called Great Shun. So it all stops when Shun comes along. He actually fought into Beijing, into the imperial palace. And where did Chongzhen Emperor go? Chongzhen Emperor escaped to the back of the palace onto a mountain. Actually, not even a mountain, like a hill, the Jingshan Hill. And on the Jingshan Hill, there are some coal, and there is a tree. He hung himself on the tree, and that is the end of the Ming Empire. So the shame of Ming Empire is hanging on the tree, and Li Zicheng is known as Da Shun. And moreover, at about the same time, there's someone's name called Zhang Xianzhong. He also named himself the king, and his reign is also named Da Shun, the same as Li Zicheng. And also at about the same time, there is another person, Emperor Shunzhi of the Qing dynasty. And this is the strongest Shun. And when he named himself Shunzhi, he was in Shenyang city of the Liaoning province. And at that time, Shenyang was the Manchu's capital. And when they fought their way into Beijing, their reign was still called Shunzhi. And so the Ming Emperor stopped when Shun came along. So the Ming Empire, from its beginning to its end, Liu Bowen profited every big event, including how the emperor will die. And he was very accurate on the details as well. It's very interesting, right? Let's go back to when they were writing the poem. Liu Bowen and Zhu Yuanzhang, they were still talking, right? So what does it mean that the world doesn't end? 未已 doesn't end. Liu Bowen said, there are tens of thousands of children and grandchildren. The honorable and auspicious join his ancestors. The nobles and ministers never again meet in the golden court. 18 children have challenges upon challenges. Tens of thousands of children and grandchildren. We now know who it is. 10,000 means Wan in Chinese, and it is Wanli Emperor's children and grandchildren. So Wanli Emperor's son was on the throne for a month, and his grandchildren was the carpenter emperor, and his other grandchildren was Chongzhen, which means honorable and auspicious. When you just look at it, you see tens of thousands of children and grandchildren. You think that it's many descendants, but no, it doesn't mean that. It actually means the children and grandchildren of Wanli. And also, it says the honorable and auspicious joins his ancestors. It's a riddle. When you look at the Chinese characters, if you add the characters together, it actually means Chongzhen, the name of the emperor. And Chongzhen means the honorable and the auspicious. So it's so accurate that he predicted the name, the reign of the emperor. It was said that when Li Zicheng's army fought its way into the Beijing city, Chongzhen Emperor was a very good emperor. If Chongzhen was at Wanli's place, then he could make the Ming Emperor pass on for another 100 years. But it was at the end, he has no way to turn it around. It's like a large ship that has many holes on it. You cannot mend the holes even if a great captain comes aboard. And so when Li Zicheng fought its way into Beijing city, Chongzhen Emperor went to the imperial court and sounded the bell. And when he sounded the bell, no one came to court. Nobody came. It's such a tragedy. Think about it. The enemy is here. The enemy's army is here. And when you ring the bell, nobody comes. Back then, years and years ago, the loyal ministers, they were not going and they were there. But now everybody has run away. And so alone, this emperor walked to the back of the Jingshan Hill and hung himself. And during that time, what was the earth and heaven like? So Chongzhen Emperor went onto the throne at the age of 16, and he was on the throne for 17 years. And during this year, there was a lot of disasters. There was drought, locust plague, famine, and people were run away from their home, and there were rebellions. There was not a good day. And also in Beijing, just a few years earlier, there was a great plague pandemic that took over 200,000 people's lives. And when Li Zicheng fell into the Beijing city, there were very few soldiers guarding the palace. At the time, there were also Ming soldiers that was defending the Manchu's invasion in the Shanghai Pass. If you send soldiers to the Shanghai Guan to defend the empire, and he has sent orders to recruit soldiers, but he only recruited 300,000 soldiers. He couldn't recruit any more soldiers because many people has already died in war, and many people have went to follow Li Zicheng. And his Li Zicheng's slogan was that if you want to have food, then follow Li Zicheng. And so many people, many men rebelled following Li Zicheng. And so in this great empire, it was so difficult to recruit 300,000 soldiers, and half of the soldiers didn't have a weapon, and they didn't have proper winter clothing or shoes, and on the second day on the battlefield, they got defeated. It was such a horrible state. Who can be a successful emperor in this state? And Chongzhen Emperor was very diligent. He was very hardworking. When there's natural disasters, there are also man-made misfortune. Not only Li Zicheng was rebelling, everyone was rebelling. When there's no food, people will think, let me just rebel. I don't need to follow the law anymore. I just need to get some food. And so robbery was, there was a lot of robberies. If you don't give me, then I will kill you. And it was so bad to the extent that there was human cannibalism. And 3 generations ahead, the emperors were very bad. Previously, there was some successful businessman who told me that I'm already very successful. My company is very successful. Now I can just go and climb the Himalaya mountain. It's crazy. Your company is so big and you just go around and playing and eating. Then you are not far from your death. If you are an emperor and you don't take care of your empire, then your empire will end in a very bad way, in such a horrible way that even when we talk about it, we feel very sad. It's very difficult to create such an empire, and it's so easy to destroy it. And then in the end, when Shun came into Beijing, why did he become a monk? Because it was very difficult to rebuild the territory. There was no soldier, there's no money, there's no food. Whoever sits on the throne is in pain. And so he just gave up everything. Those who are greedy, you just be greedy. And I'm a good person, but you scold me. And that's why he gave up everything and studied Buddhism. He saw through that everything is about greed. And so Shun Emperor of the Qing dynasty became a monk. It was because of these natural disasters and man-made disasters that caused the situation. He saw through the ups and downs of the human world and went to pursue the higher way. And we talked so much, but what's the most amazing is Liu Bowen. Liu Bowen was able to predict the precise time and the people's name who is involved. He was so precise. But he made these prophecies at the beginning of the Ming Empire. And he accurately predicted events that are 276 years later. It's said that he predicted his prophecies covers the next 500 years. And so in addition that we're in awe to Ming dynasty's history, but we praise Liu Bowen. He is such an incredible person. At the beginning, we talked about another incredible person, and that is monk Yao Guangxiao. Yao Guangxiao was also very a great clairvoyant, that he saw that Zhu Di will be the emperor, and he also helped Zhu Di to become the emperor, a good emperor. Before Zhu Di became the emperor, he was in Nanjing. When Zhu Di first became the emperor, his capital city was also in emperor, and it was Yao Guangxiao's advice that if you want the Ming empire to be secure, then you should go to Beijing. That's where the true dragon pass is. You sit in the north and face the south, and you can control the entire territory. At the beginning, Zhu Di didn't want to go. You're joking. Behind me are all the enemies. It's the border of the territory. You want me to fight enemies every day? Yao Guangxiao said, no, it's not. But the empire's fortune lies there. Once you go there, the world will be peaceful. And it is proven that when Ming dynasty used Beijing as its capital, it was able to rule for 276 years. And the Qing dynasty, with the capital in Beijing, also ruled about similar period of time. There are always these unique people that can predict the future. They know how the world will go. And even in modern days, there are many famous clairvoyants and prophets. They are truly great. And I hope that everyone gets some knowledge of such people. These unique people, they can gain divine inspirations. And Liu Bowen is such a person, and more divine inspirations. Sometimes they are accurate, sometimes they're not. But there are also cheats as well. But true psychics, true divine, true people who can truly read the divine. So did Liu Bowen wrote the Shaobing Song? Did these emperors read the Shaobing Song? Most of the emperors of the Ming dynasty read the Shaobing Song, but even at the time, they couldn't understand it. And that's how accurate it is. But later on, when the event is over and when you read it again, you realize how accurate it is. And so you cannot understand it ahead of the time. Because if you do understand it before something happens, then the event will change its course. And so we should self-cultivate well through meditation and even energy bagua. We can also gain connection to the divine. When I was young, when I self-cultivated very well, when I meet a person, I'm able to tell many things about that person. I remember meeting a lady who was about 30 years old. I don't remember why she talked to me. I asked her, "Did you get angry at your son yesterday?" She asked me, "Is it written on my face?" I said, "No, it's not, but I felt it. And also, you had some heartburn, right? And when you walk, you had leg pain, right?" She asked me, "How did I know? Am I limping?" No, she wasn't limping. But how did you know? My feeling was that there was a shadow of her that is talking to me. So she was talking to me. She was telling me. It's another type of psychic power. In one of the Western countries, there was a lady when she heard other people talk, she could hear the sound waves, and through these sound waves she can see your fortune and your health. Everyone's voice has a sound wave, but you cannot see a sound wave, right? How do you analyze this? But she can. There are many different types of psychic powers. And so I just want you to gain a little bit more knowledge about this. So that's all about Shaobing Song, about the prophecies. What about our next live stream? Our next live stream is actually tomorrow in North America, Vancouver time. It's Saturday, March 26th at 6 p.m. And in Asia, Taipei time, it's Sunday, March 27th at 9 a.m. So it's the same time tomorrow. All right? Tomorrow's content will be also very interesting. It's very different from today. It's completely a different series, although it's one after another, but it's completely different. I welcome everyone to join me. I wish auspiciousness to everyone. May you have good health, happiness, and joy. See you tomorrow.
人生变得神奇，我只会